Hello guys, I gave an interview in a company called Orion Innovation, and that position was for the lamp developer, and the interview date was the February 11, 2025. So they asked me some question related to Linux questions, and then they asked me to write crude validation, write like read, update, and delete. So first of all, I created a routes inside the routes.php. I created some routes like the users for user controller index, user slash create for the user controller create, post user store, user controller store, then get users edit controller edit slash $1, then users update uh, colon num user controller update one, then get users delete user controller delete one. Okay, then we created a we created a user controller.php. So all the thing we are doing in the coding nighter. Okay, so we created a user controller.php, and we have created some function like the index, create, store, save, edit, update, delete. Okay, then we created a model. The model name was the user model, and then the table name is the users, primary key is id, allows field name email, and in the last we created a view, that is the index.php. Okay, so in index.php we created some column id, name, email, action. Okay, then we created another views or like the create.php. Then we created edit form inside the views also. Then database table we created which contains id, name, and email. Okay, and that's it, that is the MVC. Okay, so then they asked me what is the MVC in PHP. So I said MVC model view controller is a design pattern then separate an application into three components like model manage data and database logics, views handle UI and display data, and controller manage request and business logic. Okay, so business logic means controller, and database logic is model, and view is the handle UI and display data. So again they asked me for example, so which I have already told him that we created 3 MVC. Okay, so then he asked how does it work. So user request a URL, the router direct request to controller, then controller calls model, then model fetches data from DB, then controller send data to view, then view display data. Okay, so the bottom line is model is data, view is display, controller is logics. Then he asked me views in database. So I said in SQL a view is a virtual table based on the result set of an SQL statement. A view contains rows and columns just like a real table. The fields in a view are fields from one or more real tables in the database. So key points: virtual table. A view doesn't store data itself, it stores the SQL query that generates the data. Based on a query, it creates using selected statement that pulls data from one or more tables. The no data storage. Okay, a view doesn't store data, it show a dynamic result set based in the underlying tables. So they ask me why do we use views. So simplify complex queries. You can store complex join and query as views and then access them like the simple tables. Improve security. By restricting access to certain column or tables, you can create views that only show the necessary data. Data abstraction. View provides an abstraction layer, meaning to underlying table structure can change without affecting how user interact with the data. So in SQL, views are typically read only, but in certain cases you can update a view. However, there is general limitation depending on the complexity of the view and the database you are using. So when can you update a view? If you can update a view if the view is based on a single table, The view does not include any aggregation like the group by, joins, listing, subqueries in the select statement. All the columns of the views are updatable, meaning the underlying tables allow modification through the views. Why can't you update a view? You can't update a view because it involves multiple tables like join between tables. It uses aggregate function like sum count. It includes distinct group by or complex subqueries, or the view is based on a computed or derived column, concat or case expression. In summary, yes, you can update a view if they are simple table, no joins or no aggregation. For more complex query, join, subquery, aggregation, you cannot directly update them. Trigger in PHP. A trigger is a code associated with insert, update and delete operation, that is IUD. Trigger. A trigger is a stored procedure in database which automatically invoke whenever a special event in the database occurs. For example, a trigger can be invoked when a row is inserted into a specific table or when certain columns are being updated. When we use trigger, a trigger is code association with insert, update and delete, which I have already told. So can you give me some example how the triggers works? So a table, users table, a table to store user data, user log, a table to log any update made to the user table. So first of all, we created a users table and we have created ID, username and email columns. Then create table user log, another table we have to create which contains ID, user ID, old mail, new mail, updated. The user table store user ID, username and email. The user log table stores logs about the change, email change, specifically the user's ID, old and new table values and the timestamp when the change was made. Create a trigger. So now we will create a before update trigger that will log any change to the email field in the users table. So create the trigger. So delimiter, create trigger before update on users for each row begin. Then if old value is not equal to new value, then insert into user log, user ID, mail, old mail, new mail, value old user ID, new ID, and then delimiter. This before update trigger will fire before any users the users table. If the email is changed, the old email is differentiate from the new one. The trigger will be logged in the old and new value into the user log table. Perform an update. Let's update a user's email in the user table. The trigger will automatically log the changes in the user. So insert a sample, insert some dummy data in the users table, update the users table, update users like you are updating the email, then check the logs. After performing the update, you can check the log table to see a log of the email. So select star from user log. You should see an query in the log table like this: log ID, username, old mail, new mail, and updated. Summary: we created two tables.